Welcome to the Lead Generation Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Joey Myers. This podcast is brought to you by Lead Generation SEO Services.com, and that's with an S at the end of services, and in Fuego Media. We get clients for customers, more customers, patients, and their version of the client by creating multimedia content using a mix of AI or artificial intelligence, software automation, and fantastic writers. And then we distribute that content to over 400 partnership sites. A couple hundred of those are media sites like ABC, Fox, and NBC. And these traffic and rankings can be seen within 48 hours after publishing. So today I want to welcome Mr. Greg. Is it Poulos or Poulos?
Poulos.
Poulos.
Yeah.
He wrote a book that you can get on Amazon titled Never Sit in the Lobby, 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow a Business and Build a Career Selling. And what's cool is that the 17 book reviews so far, and this is a newly published book, he's got an average star rating of 4.9. So that is awesome. So first, thanks, Greg, for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joey. Great to be here.
So Greg and I were talking right before this that with everything going on in the economy now, I think real estate is on I don't want to say the chopping block, because I got a lot of real estate friends that, there's some good and the bad going on, but things have kind of turned since the interest rates have moved up. And we were talking, Greg's in telecom, and just talking about some of the innovation and creativity we got to do now. So there's no better time than now to talk sales. And Glenn is really, really good at sales. So Glenn, kind of give people a background of your background, just kind of catch us up to speed and, in a paragraph or two.
Sure. No problem. Yeah. So I've been basically selling in a sales company of various favors for about 37, I think, years it is now, since around 1985. So I think my math's okay there. And I was actually a civil servant for the federal government. I live in Canada. I live in near Toronto, and I work for Environment Canada, similar to the Weather Service. And my boss said, "Hey, dude, you're in the wrong business. You need to go into sales." So I convinced the guy to hire me in a technology sales company. And using the kind of instruments I was working on at the government, I went to a company that sold them and started selling them. And then 5-6 years later, I started my own business. It was a sales company selling same kind of technology products, and grew it for about 15 years, and ended up selling it to a public company. And it's probably too long of a story to go into, but the reality is that the public company was probably not the best partner to pick, and they closed down our division, and I had to actually start over after 15 years, and I had to rebuild the company. So I started a similar business and grew it for another 15 years. And in February, I actually sold it again, a different company, and my second exit, and this time it was with a very large company out of Washington, D.C., a private equity firm, and for an all-cash deal this time, not a bunch of shares. And so during the pandemic, that was when I didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do. We're all locked down in Canada, and decided to write the book, right? And lots of stories in those 37 years, which we can probably get into at the right moment here today. So
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Thanks for catching us up to speed there. And I got to apologize. I called you Greg, and it must've been autocorrect thing. So it's Glenn. I'm sure it's not the worst thing that you've been called in those years.
It's your podcast. You can call me whatever you want.
I could have called you whatever I wanted. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So kind of let's start with getting back, we got to the present now. So what's the biggest problem that you solve for your clients in this telecom business?
So we're bringing the today's advanced technology to the markets that we serve and the geographies that we serve. And depending upon the exact technology, it's either across North America or across Canada. Some of it's just in Canada, some just in the US, some across all of North America. And we're scouring the globe, bringing advanced wireless solutions to the market. And these are typically smaller companies that haven't, exploded in terms of their size. And they bolt on to the world-class wireless companies like Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung, and companies like that are, household names. And we help build the wireless network, in our territory, in the markets that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And, we like to say there's a lot of wires in wireless, and we sell wires, right? And
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. The conundrum there. So Glenn, what would you say that, and you've been in the telecom industry for how long?
Since 1985.
Okay. So, let's just look back of the changes in that industry as you talk about technology, and say, I know it moves really fast. So maybe in the last 5 years, what 5 years ago versus now, what the technology, how far it's come.
So do you mean technology to be a salesperson, or the technology that we sell?
Start with the technology in general, and then we'll get into the sales side of it.
Okay. Yeah. So our business is governed by the G's of the world. So we started in 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, right? And we're praying there's a 6G, right? Because we're sort of, some of our customers are right in the finishing up their 5G builds, and everyone's heard of 5G, right? And but this requires technology overlays by the carriers. For the last 5 years, they were sort of coming out of the LTE 4G space and into the much more higher throughput. It's all about speeds now, and multi-rich content coming to you via your phone, and totally different. And imagine the difference between, just serving voice calls at a stadium with 50,000 people compared to every single person on Facebook and Instagram, and live streaming video up to their, the bandwidth requirements are just out of this world, right? And and that's really the biggest change, is that technology, and how 5G's enabled those kinds of speeds and those kinds of applications to run on people's handsets. That's probably the biggest change that I've seen.
And I've seen some of in the crypto space too, some of the blockchains of some like the way, some interesting stuff where they're multiplying just a simple, we got a router and you got a certain extension, right? You got a certain area that router will give you wireless.
You mean like the helium network, or the helium? Yeah. There's actually so many. There's the helium network. Actually, that was a great thing, and I actually ordered a few myself, right? Because it's just so cool. Yeah. And but there's a lot of them out there now, and I mean, you can have your own sort of wet base station on your house, right, or at your work, or wherever you have real estate. You can put up one of these little mini cells. It's a nano cell, or a femto cell even. It's so small in terms of its footprint, and sell that. Sell your internet service. It connects to the internet and to the back end of the carrier, like T-Mobile or Verizon, AT&T, and they pay you for the people coming on the network, right? And as people roam onto your helium box or whatever, you get paid for that, right? And you get paid in crypto, which
it's kind of cool. And they're
very cool.
Coming. I mean, they're not up and coming, I guess. They've been established for a little bit now. They're just kind of, like you said, building their network, the people's network. But one of the cool things that I had seen an article, was it the low RAMA? What is it? The long range.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Where it can take a signal and it can push it out to like 2.6 kilometers. So now your radius is like 2.6 kilometers. It's crazy how much bigger that is. That something that the telecom industry is trying to adopt or trying to modify to match? Yeah.
It's funny. The area that I'm involved in primarily, the footprint's actually shrinking, because really the market we're serving is that super high speed market where they're raising the frequencies, and so the distance will shrink, right?
Gotcha.
Though that technology is a little bit lower frequency, and it can penetrate farther, and it can go through things like trees and other obstructions. And whereas the really advanced technology, some of the stuff we're working on, is up in the 60 and 80 gigahertz range, but it's only a few hundred feet that these base stations will go. But the data, the bandwidths are insane, right? And this is what the carriers are testing right now. And so there's kind of at both ends of the spectrum, right? There's systems that can serve rural or semi-rural or suburban markets where you want to spread it out because the people are spread out, and then the dense urban super dense markets or stadiums and things like that, where there's 50,000 people, in a small little footprint, right? But in your neighborhood, that might only amount to like a couple hundred people, right? In the same space. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that, Glenn, about that. That makes sense though, where you get a higher intensity bandwidth or whatever, you can download faster, everything, but obviously your zone's going to shrink a little bit because it's not using microwaves or whatever it is. Those waves. Yeah. So let's move into the sales part of things. So I have Glenn on because he's a sales guy, and typically our audience, he's an expert in this. And typically our audience are like real estate agents, or maybe dental practice owners, or service-based industry business owners, things like that. And so I wanted to have Glenn on so that he can share some salesmanship stuff, because I think at this time in the economy, there's no better time than to talk sales now to better our sales processes and things like that. So let's talk about real estate agents. They're very good, personable people, for the most part extroverted, but there are some introverted ones. They base most of their business off of referral. Right. Now, what may need to happen, which, as you probably would agree, is I would say more of a defensive lead strategy, right? You don't really control it. You can control it, but it's a sit and wait type of scenario. What's your advice for a business that puts a lot into referral? What are like maybe the top 2 sales strategies that you would use for those type of people?
So it's always funny when this comes up, because a lot of the techniques in the book are they come across sounding a little bit old school, because the stories maybe are from a while ago, but the lessons actually are universal, as I'll explain in a minute. But so the way I explain it is that, I suggest people like realtors and anyone that's needs a large deal, like say lead funnel or deal funnel coming at them, to basically try to work with outsourced companies to drive those deals to them, and not have them spend their time generating that kind of basically the way I explain it is, when you're in front of the customer, that's selling, everything else is marketing, and you should hire good companies to help you with that. And because you're either a marketer or you're a sales, you could do both, but you can't be in 2 places at one time, right? So I recommend people use services, and I think you're the expert on this in terms of AI and lead generation and things like that, and bringing that. The salesman's job is to take those leads and get in front of the customer, and then stay in front of the customer through a series of techniques and just methodologies so that they're constantly building that rapport and that relationship, and then those people then pass on your name willingly to everyone else, because you're such a pleasure to do business with, if I can say it that way, right? And so I'm constantly trying to help either my guys or other people that I'm talking to, or coaching, to figure out which side of the spectrum you want to be on, the lead generation and the marketing where the chairs are comfortable, and then the sales job where the chairs have nails in the bottom of them, right? and it's kind of funny, but true salespeople, they're happiest when they are in front of customers, but sometimes they get a little bit tired, and they sit in their chair, and the chair gets comfortable, and having just another coffee or whatever. But really, the real magic happens when they're in front of the customer, and so they have to build systems and processes to drive them with leads, so they can make that phone call, schedule a meeting, get in front of them, and then when you're there, drive the next meeting and the next meeting, right? And that's the one trick that I always tell people, which is, they're saying like, oh, I have a hard time, getting another appointment with the guy. And I said, well, you should have come back with the appointment. Like, the next appointment is easy because you're going to make it when you're there, right? Like, now, of course, if the whole thing's dead and done and whatever, maybe there's no follow-up meeting, but most of the time, especially even if you just got the deal, the next meeting will be sort of a celebration lunch or whatever, right? Like, or, even a coffee, drop off bottle of wine, whatever you're doing if you're a realtor. And, but you always want to be, when you're finishing the last call, you want to book the next meeting so that you could be, and when they're in that flow with you, they're going to agree to that next meeting. Now that's done. And then you can start building calls in that area around that meeting, right? And
that's great advice. Yeah. I think, so I was talking with a realtor I think it was down in Malibu, and it was kind of a 2-gal team, and they business has been around for a while. One of the gals was kind of a mentee, the mentor, and then she got hired on, and they were busy doing their sales and working the referrals, but like you said, not having time to pull in new leads. So I think it's great advice to delegate that out to somebody, a marketing team that can do that and bring that in. So I thought that's great. Yeah, it's hard to do two things at once. I've done that myself. I like the sales side of things. But you have to pick one or the other, I think.
Yeah.
You have a chapter that you talk a lot about the importance of leaving a voicemail and or email. So can you go into some of those strategies a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Always leave a voicemail. Right. And I do go on sort of ad nauseum in the book about that. And whenever I'm asked about it, but I also, there's a story in the book where I tell where, there was a time some years back when I was actually going through a divorce, and I was kind of, let's say, down in the dumps, and I wasn't at my best, and I had stopped responding to, voicemails and stuff like that. And I didn't realize, the quick version of the story is that, it kind of became a standing joke, like, oh, leave a voicemail for me, right? And it was like, oh yeah, like if you never want to call back, leave him a voicemail, right? But when one of my coworkers finally, ripped the Band-Aid off and told me that story, right? Like for me, it was like, it shook me to my core. And I never forgot that. And it was shortly after that company closed after I had sold it, and I had to start my new business. And I vowed that I would always pick up the phone if possible, and I would always return phone calls. And if it was a salesman, and they'd gone to the trouble of leaving me a voicemail, even if it was for like toner cartridges that I didn't need, I would still phone them back, right? And so my attitude about the voicemail is like, it's so annoying when someone kind of, I call it drunk dialing, right? Where they call you and they call you and they call you and they never leave a voicemail. And soon enough, you see area code 586 or whatever. And it's like, anyone from 586, I'm not picking up, right? Because it was that guy who called once, you couldn't take the call, whatever, you know who it was. And then he just keeps drunk dialing you over and over, never leaves a voicemail. And now you're wondering what the heck it was about. And so I always say, always leave a voice. If you're going to make the phone call, don't be that guy that phones and then hangs up and then calls back an hour later. Leave a voicemail, less than 20 seconds, never more than 30 seconds. And they say, why less? No, why can't it be less than 20 seconds or whatever? And the reason why is because a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people, they look at the time amount on the voicemails. And if they're under a certain length, they just delete them because they're thinking, well, nothing of any merit could be said in 7 seconds, right? Jack from Xerox, call me back, click, right? That's not, I know, maybe I can understand what that was, but still, it's not a very good voicemail, right? And so, 20 to 30 seconds, and I'm always prepared for the reason why I'm calling, right? One of my rules when you're visiting or when you're phoning, something in your hand and something in your mind. When you're calling them, the phone is in your hand, and your deal, the reason you're calling is what's in your mind. Same when you visit, could be literature, could be a quote, could be a mouse pad or a water bottle or a pen, whatever your company's giving, with something in your hand, something in your mind to talk about. And you want to start off with, I'm calling because, we've been working with companies like yours, increasing productivity, reducing downtimes, increasing production capacity, whatever it is your business does, some sort of a compelling, and I call it kind of like a greedy need that you're going to fill, and say, look, I want to get 15 minutes on your calendar, or whatever it is. If you can give me a call back, I'll send you an email to follow up. And then you're giving the guy kind of an out. He doesn't have to phone you back. And then it gives you an opportunity to phone back. And he knows, it kind of says, oh yeah, that was that guy, and he's got that production, capacity increaser or whatever, or, that new car, or that, that 3-bedroom house, or whatever it is you sell, right? And so you're more inclined to pick up the call the second time, or I'm going to follow it up with an email. And I could then, if I'm so inclined, I could reply to the email and say, we're looking at 3-bedroom houses, but not today. Can we do it in 2 weeks or what have you? And, and I'm just building up a series of patterns and companies that I'm dealing with on an ongoing basis. And it eventually, by doing that, phoning, proper voicemails, compelling reason for calling, follow up with an email, phone back, eventually you end up, and then depending upon what goes on the phone call, I'm always trying to get in front of them because then you're gauging the competition, what else they're looking at, what the environment is they work in. Your competitive product could be sitting on the guy's desk right now, and heck, he could be wearing that guy's shirt, right?
Right.
And right, it's like, oh, okay, well, I know who you bought from last time, right? And so those are some of the reasons why around voicemails and why I'm compelled to leave them, and some of the guidelines around how I leave them. So
yeah, very good advice. And we have over since the last couple of years, we have this more Zoom environment as well.
Right.
So what's your advice? Actually, before we get to that, one of the things that I've actually picked up on recently, getting back to the voicemails or even email, is not doing too much in a voicemail or an email. Not trying to, hey, check out this website. Hey, this is, trying to do too many things that are like 2-3 steps. Like it's just one step at a time. What's your advice on that?
So voicemails and the emails in that area of the book, it all kind of goes together. And also with the email as well. If it's like more than a couple sentences, then you need to talk to them on the phone or do it when you're visiting them, because everybody hates a novel over email. It's like, oh my God, I'm already like a paragraph in, I'm already bored. And, you're not compelled to read this guy's 3-paragraph email, right? And they think they've crafted the best things in sliced bread. And nowadays on LinkedIn, you probably get like 3 a day of those, right? And they seem well written, but they're missing the mark in terms of being, intuitive towards the person they're writing to, right? And so I always keep the email succinct. And, it's just a follow-up to maintain the contact. And the voicemail, again, I'm always in that range of trying to be 20 to 30 seconds. And really, I'm just really what I'm trying to do is drop that, what I call that little greedy tidbit, right? Which is, there's a new house that hit the market. There's a new, a new technique of this. There's a new production method of that. There's a new instrument, a new box, a new widget, whatever it is you sell, right? And to try to say, and then, you would try to drive him to be compelled to want to talk to you about it, and then say, look, I'll follow up with you later today, tomorrow, whatever. I'll also send you an email, feel free to get back to me, but do it quickly. And I always skip all the other, BS pleasantries, right? And I kind of acted out in the book, right? Where I have these 2 scenarios where the guy calls up and it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? It's Glenn from Acme. Did I catch you at a bad time? And like that, I'm already set off at that point, right? And then it's like, oh, do you have a minute and to chat? And I'm like, dude, you're already 30 seconds in and I can't stand you, right?
Let's go.
Like, no, it's Jack from Acme. We've been working with some factories in your area, saving them 20% on their maybe electricity bills or gas bills on their tow motors, right? On their forklifts, on their trucks, tire wear, whatever it is you sell, right? And I wanted to see if I could get, 15 minutes of your time to go over some of these things, this, that, or the other. And don't start off with all those fake pleasantries that just really just annoy people, right? And I literally script it right out in the book how I do it, right? And I always skip, and the other thing is I don't actually say, how are you? I always say, because if I say to you, how are you? You always are going to say pretty much fine, how are you, right? Because you were programmed that way by your parents, right? It's a programmed response. But if I say, hey Joe, I hope you're doing well, I just wanted to drop a little tidbit, I just wanted to drop this little morsel of knowledge on your plate. Like nowhere in there are you compelled to that reciprocity of asking me how I am, because you don't care. And
I don't know,
right? You don't know me or whatever, right? But I still asked you how you were, kind of indirectly, right? Hope you're doing well. Boom, right? And I'm straight in, no delays, and just get straight to the point, right? And it's unbelievable. If you listen, I don't know if you get a lot of sales calls like on the phone, but because I try to pick up all the phone calls and stuff. Sorry, that's
speaking of phone calls. That was right on. That was right on par, right there.
Yeah, that was a little timer thing. Sorry. And,
okay.
But it caused me to completely lose my train of thought, right? And
that's okay. So how about on, and I know we're getting up on our time here. So I know that's what that was probably reminding you of, which is good. I want to be respectful of your time. So maybe one more question.
Yeah.
So let's kind of stay in the real estate side. And what are the two big things in an in-person meeting? So for real estate agents meeting with a prospective client, right, at the house, what are the two big no-nos on that? With that,
okay, so well, definitely the biggest no-no for me is a thing I call implied familiarity also breeds contempt, right? Where, and I tell a good story in the book where the guy goes in, and this could be an officer at the person's home, and I see a photo, and it's him and this guy fishing, and he's holding a fish, right? And I start off with, oh my God, yeah, like bass fishing, I'm a pro, you know, blah blah blah. Maybe we should go do some bass fishing. And the guy looks over his shoulder at the photo, and he goes, oh my God, he goes, that's my ex father-in-law, right? I'm divorced from her. God, he was an asshole. And I forgot that photo was even there. Takes the photo, throws it in the garbage, goes, you know what? I fucking hate fishing, right? I only did that to shut the wife up, and we're not even married anymore, right? Like, don't pretend that you know the people, right? Like, don't be like fake. You know, there's that saying, familiarity breeds contempt. You hang around someone too long, you see all their bad points, and right. And so if you imply like you know them really well, that is very also upsets people, right? It's like, you don't know me, like you don't know that I like fishing or skiing or surfing or whatever. You know, don't you know, you have to go at it from a more
like pandering,
you know, genuine. Like, yeah, you got to go from a more genuine approach, right? You know, we have a thing. The other one is watch your weekend problem, which is a little thing we do. So and it's the same so you don't forget it. Watch your weekend problem. So the watch means always check out their watch, and if it's of any quality at all, notice their watch and say, oh my God, that's a really nice watch, right? And it just inspires a lot of talking a lot of times in people, where they got it, who gave it to them, you know, and your weekend is, instead of asking them about the fishing or whatever, say, look, what do you guys do on the weekend? You know, when you're not working, whatever, you know, and that you often find out a lot of things. Oh, I'm a ballroom dancer, I'm a singer, you know, I water ski, I do this, I surf, I fish, whatever, right? And then what's the biggest problem you're facing right now in your business, in your home, and you're this and you're that, right? Like whatever challenge, whatever you're, whatever you're facing. So watch your weekend problem. That's the other thing we always try when you're trying to inspire conversation in people, and it kind of gets, it kind of gets the conversation flowing in a non kind of salesman-y kind of a way, right? It builds rapport, which I'm really big on building and keeping and maintaining rapport and frame around rapport.
Great advice, Glenn. Great advice. So, so to be respectful of your time, where can people find you, get more information? I mentioned the book on Amazon, but just kind of throw it out there.
So I have a website, glennpoulos.com, GLENNPOULOS.com, and all the links are there. All my socials, very active on LinkedIn and on all the other socials as well. And love to, if anyone wants to talk, collaborate in any way, have a question, anytime they can feel free to get a hold of me. I'll be sure to answer the phone call or phone them back or respond to them on LinkedIn.
Cool. Thanks, Glenn. So, so if you like this podcast episode, then please like, review, and or share. We really appreciate the feedback. If you're interested in hearing more about our multimedia marketing events, then please visit leadgenerationseoservices.com, again with an S at the end there on the website, and click on the marketing events link to watch a 3 to 4 minute video overview of what those marketing events are. So Glenn Poulos.
Yeah.
Poulos.
Yeah.
Poulos. Yeah. So he wrote a book again. You can get this on Amazon or at his website he just mentioned. It is called Never Sit in the Lobby, 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow a Business and Build a Career Selling. So Glenn, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, hold on.